Hello and welcome back to the Out of Spec podcast. The next generation Nissan Leaf is on its way, and I'm super excited, but kind of disappointed at the same time. Let's talk about it. This episode is made possible by the support we get from Fort Collins Kia. If you are in the market for any electric Kia, not only do they never add market adjustments, they will deliver your car to you anywhere in the 48 contiguous states for Out of Spec viewers. More information in the link in this episode's description. $650,000. That's how many Nissan Leafs have been sold year to date. The Nissan Leaf back in 2010 was the first mass market EV. It paved the way for the Chevy Bolt, the Tesla Model S, and I think really contributed to the EV present we have today and will continue to contribute to the EV future that we will see 10, 15 years from now. Now again, starting production in 2010, now we're here in 2025, and the Nissan Leaf has only had really two big changes in the generation. We had from 2010 to 2017, then 2017 to today. And that's what the Nissan Leaf really stands for, consistency. It has been consistently really the same EV for such a long period of time. Back in 2010, 29 kilowatt hour battery, 100 miles of range, CHAdeMO. Here we are in 2025, 150 to 200 miles of range, depending on what battery option you get, CHAdeMO, and in essence, it has the same form factor that it was back in 2010. But now we're getting a new generation Nissan Leaf. Now let's talk about this concept that was revealed in 2021 by Nissan called the Chill Out. And Nissan said this is the prototype for the concept for the next generation Nissan Leaf in terms of design. And we can look here, right? It has pretty much ditched the hatchback shape of the Nissan Leaf that we're used to, kind of going more for a coupe, almost, compact, mid-sized SUV form factor. No longer that smaller sedan hatchback that we're used to, which I think speaks to the larger US market and I think the auto market as a whole. Mid-sized SUVs sell super well, particularly here in the United States. We don't have a lot of compact cars, period. We do sell quite a bit of compact and sedan vehicles, but our bigger markets, the bread and butter, is mid-sized SUVs and trucks. And it's the same reason why we see so many EV trucks and mid-sized SUVs. We have the Model Y, the ED4, the Prologue, the ZDX, the BZ4X, the Solterra, the Audi Q4, the Q6, the Wagoneer S, the Ioniq 5, the EV6. I can go on and on. We have a lot of mid-sized SUVs. Same thing with trucks. The Ford Lightning, Chevy Silverado EV, Tesla Cybertruck, Rivian R1T, GMC Sierra. There are a lot of EV trucks as well. And because we have a lot of internal combustion engine mid-sized vehicles and trucks. And if you want to sell, you're going to make sure that the niche product that EVs are is going to go to the mass market. And when I say niche, I really mean as EVs aren't selling as well as the internal combustion engine. And as infrastructure increases, that's going to change. But the point is, if you're going to invest billions, hundreds of millions to billions of dollars in a new vehicle, you're going to make sure it's in a segment that sells well. And so with Nissan upgrading the Nissan Leaf, they want to make sure it's in a segment that sells well. And that likely means them having to increase the size of the Nissan Leaf to something that is more mid-size SUV-like. Now, jumping over to actual in-person prototype images of the next generation Nissan Leaf, we can kind of get this full look of the body lines here. Now, still keeps some of that hatch shape, but it is much more like a compact mid-sized SUV than it is the smaller, lower to the ground hatchback that it previously was. I mean, look at this ground clearance here. Of course, it's a prototype, but you can see here it is raised much higher off the ground than the current generation Nissan Leaf. And again, going off these wheels here, very similar to the current generation Nissan Leaf wheels. And so that kind of gives another hint. All right, this is looking like the Nissan Leaf. Now, looking at the rear here, we can see these lights. Now, I can't tell if this is part of the camo that Nissan is using to cover up the body design of the vehicle, or if that is the actual tail light headlight design. Because if we go over here, we can see again these lines in the tail light, again these lines in the headlights. I'm thinking it might just be part of the camo to hide the actual design of the light, but if not, it reminds me of the Hyundai Ioniq lineup, the Ioniq 6, as well as the 9, and even the 5, with all of the squares and geometric shapes. It kind of reminds me of that. Then going over here to it charging here at an Electrify America station, we can see close up, it is using CCS1. Now, Nissan has said that the Nissan Ariya this year, 2025, will get native NACS. So it's expected that it will also get native NACS. Could you imagine the Nissan Leaf had CHAdeMO for 15 years? We went through CCS for years. Now we're finally going to the North American charging standard, J3400. And could you imagine if the Nissan Leaf went from CHAdeMO to CCS1? And it just stayed there for the next couple of years instead of just jumping straight to the North American charging standard. We'll see, but it seems that it will have native NACS. Same thing, zooming up over here, you can see the door handles. These look like collapsible doors handles, so they'll go folding into the body of the design. We know that a lot of EVs do this to help with aero, and aero is a big part of EV efficiency. And it also seemed as a more premium feature with vehicles, and so maybe Nissan's trying to give the Leaf more of a premium touch here. But in terms of pricing, which we can kind of touch on, the current Nissan Leaf, right, starts at $28,000. The Plus with the bigger battery starts at $36,000. I'm hoping that Nissan keeps this pricing. I know it's going to be harder to, but with how long the Nissan Leaf has been in production and how consistent the Nissan Leaf has been, it's easy to recommend the Nissan Leaf if you are looking for a cheap daily driver. No road trips. You can do a road trip in a Nissan Leaf, but no road trips. You're just looking to go from point A to point B, work, home, errands, home, work. Really simple. The Nissan Leaf is really easy to recommend, especially used ones. Nissan Leaf offers, I personally know people who pay just $25 a month for a Nissan Leaf in Colorado, because that's how good the incentives are. And after all the incentives, it's a couple $100 down, $20 a month to lease a Nissan Leaf. And I think that's what makes the Nissan Leaf so special. It is a really cheap, simple EV. For people saying EVs aren't cheap, you can go Nissan Leaf. Works right there. And so I'm hoping that the Nissan Leaf, at least this generation, same thing. Really easy to recommend. If it becomes too high in price, it's going to begin to compete with midsize SUV competition. The Model Y, the ID4, the Mach-E, the Ioniq vehicles, the EV6. It's going to be harder to look at the Leaf if it's just as expensive as those vehicles, just as expensive as the Ariya. So I'm hoping it keeps that pricing. But again, charging with CCS1, it's expected to go NACS. We're looking at these wheels again. These are the same Nissan Leaf wheels that we see here today. And just off more of the body lines, we can see kind of still keeping some of that hatch look, but it is going for more of a coupe, almost compact SUV size versus more of a sedan hatch that we see in the current generation Nissan Leaf. And actually going to this electric article with another prototype that was spotted pretty recently. And this was spotted here in San Francisco. You can see with the tail lights on, and we can see more of that grid pattern here. It's looking more like this is actually part of production, but again, it could be part of the camo to hide what the actual lights look like. And again, same thing, we have the chill out concept, which is the basis for this next generation Nissan Leaf. And we're going to see more of these, I think, tested on the road very soon. I mean, we are seeing them often. Within the past month, there have been multiple sightings across Reddit, Twitter, and news of these prototypes from Nissan being pictured. And you can also spot them on Nissan's headquarters, at Nissan's North American headquarters. And so clearly Nissan's working on the next generation Nissan Leaf, and it's anticipated that production will start this year, 2025. But yeah, look, I think to kind of summarize this, what we're looking for in the Nissan Leaf, I'm curious to know what you guys are looking for as well. But good price, it really doesn't have to have insane charging. I think good charge curve, 150 kilowatts, I think that works well, especially if this has a smaller battery pack, right? Minimum 250 miles of range. If you can keep that same cost basis, I think the Leaf is a banger. Because again, this is not competing with your higher end EVs. It's not supposed to compete with your larger end mid-sized EVs. It's supposed to compete with your smaller EVs. And the Nissan Leaf was the first of its kind. And we're going to be getting the next generation Chevy Bolt very soon. And so this is going to be competing with that. We're going to be getting the EV3, maybe EV5 from Kia. We're going to be getting the Rivian R3. These smaller EVs are going to be coming to market, and it's going to have to compete with this. And so I think Nissan has realized, okay, the compact, hatchback, smaller EV space is heating up. It's time for us to upgrade. And we know that Nissan is having some EV troubles. They canceled their deal with Honda, which they were really supposed to lean in heavy with Honda to depend on some of their EV technology. And so I think this will be the first vehicle that really shows whether or not Nissan is serious about not only electrification, but surviving as a company. But it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. If you own a Nissan Leaf, comment down below. I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts, right? What do you think of the design so far? Again, it's in camo, so we're not even getting like the full, look at what this is going to look like, but just from the silhouette, the shape, are you fine with it pretty much taking a more coupe, compact SUV shape versus the smaller sedan-y hatchback that we're used to seeing in the Nissan Leaf? What specs are you hoping for? What prices are you hoping for? And because again, right, 650,000 Nissan Leafs over 15 years. Nissan should have really been a leader when it comes to electrification. With all of the data and the knowledge they have when it comes to producing electric vehicles, you would think that they would have the ability, specifically in the Aria, to show that they are a leader. But the Aria is average at best. Again, great design language, but in terms of range, charging, it really lacks on the powertrain front. So I'm hoping that the Leaf powertrain, the expectations are low because again, it's a Leaf. But I'm hoping that Nissan is able to show that they're serious about this and that when it comes to electrification, Nissan knows what they're doing. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. My name is Isaiah. This is the Out of Spec podcast, and I'll see you guys in the next one.